Good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Kevin Fan. I'm a program manager on Excel. And first off, I want to thank you all today. It's not every day that I get to dress up like this. Usually, actually, if I go to work dressed up like this, my coworkers usually ask me, am I interviewing with some other team? So, thank you for giving me this opportunity. So I'm a program manager in Excel, and usually I work on charting. But today, I have the pleasure to talk about my second passion, which is business intelligence. My partner in crime this morning is Man Pratap Suri.
Hi, I'm Man Pratap, program manager with Excel Services. And unlike Dataviz fan here, BI happens to be my #1 passion.
All right, so welcome. Thank you all for coming. Apparently, you all thought that it was a good idea to come, wake up early in the morning, and listen to us wax poetic about Excel and Excel services.
Hang on a second. Wax poetic? No. Let me set the record straight. We are first-time speakers here in Atlanta at TechEd. We're nothing but a bunch of no speakers. So I'm not quite sure. I'm more worried about getting the presentation right.
I think we'll be fine. I think the work we've done in Excel and Excel services will speak for itself.
Well, with that confidence, Kevin, take it away.
All right. So I just want to give you a quick overview of what's going to happen in this session. First, I'm going to present some slides talking about how Excel and Excel services fits into the Microsoft BI strategy. Then I'm going to jump right into demos. First, I'm going to be demoing some of the new Excel 2010 BI features, and then Man Pratap's going to take it off with Excel services and the new BI investments they made there. Finally, at the end, we'll save some time for Q&A, so you guys can save those questions for the end. And we'll have Alan Folting from the Excel team also come up to answer a few questions. So with that, let's get started. All right, so just to get a gauge of this audience, I have a few questions. How many of you out there, just show of hands, are using Excel 2010 today? Wow. That is all right. That's exciting. That's a great response.
That's very good.
Yeah. Excel Services 2010. How many of you guys are using Excel Services 2010? All right.
More.
So, well, everyone's going to learn something new today then. And I know this product has only been out for a few weeks, but how many of you have signed up for the Office 365 beta?
Ooh, nice.
All right. So we have some trailblazers out here. All right, and last question. How many of you use a third-party BI tool? All right, I won't bite, but, okay. So now for those people that raise their hands, let me ask you this. What feature is in every single BI tool out in the market? Does anybody know? No, it's actually, yes, exactly. Export to Excel. Right? Every single BI tool on the market has export to Excel. And we here in Redmond, we pride ourselves in not being too oblivious, right? We read the writing on the wall. People want to do BI in Excel, right? So on the Excel client team, we got to thinking, how can we make Excel not be the last place for users' data, but instead the first place users come to do their business intelligence, right? So with that goal in mind, in 2007, we made several investments in BI. We did a couple things. We re-architected pivot tables, and we put on a brand new UI for them. We also brought Excel to the web, right? So for the first time ever with Excel services, your workbooks weren't constrained just to the desktop. They broke out of the desktop. They broke out of that amorphous stream of email attachments, right? With Excel services, you can now publish your workbooks onto SharePoint. Great. This was all for the one goal of making Excel and Excel services the BI tool of choice for our users. Right? So with a strategy shift this big, making Excel a central player in the Microsoft BI stack, we were anxious. What was the response going to be like? Well, the response was terrific. We heard from analysts, from partners, from customers that we were nailing core scenarios. But with anything that users like, they wanted more, right? They wanted more power features, and they wanted a better ability to share and manage their workbooks. So Excel 2010 really picks up where Excel 2007 left off. So how does this fit into the Excel 2010 vision? Very quickly, this is just the standard marketing slide, but on the left-hand side, we have user experience and collaboration. And what I like to call this is Excel everywhere. Excel on the phone, Excel on the web, Excel on the PC. Over to the right-hand side where we have hosted spreadsheets and programmability, this is really Excel as a platform. That's what I want you to take away from that pillar, right? Now, for the developers out there, you might be familiar with Excel using VBA, VSTO, COM, right? But in Excel 2010, we invested in even more extensibility. With Excel services, we introduced the JavaScript object model, as well as the REST API. And we also invested in making Excel a more scalable platform. So we made Excel a native 64-bit application, which means it can handle massive workbooks. And data visualization and analysis, that's what you guys are all here for today, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. I'm just going to show you. Last thing, 3 things to remember from this session. We'll repeat this slide at the end. But first, Excel everywhere. Excel on the PC, on the web, on the phone. Second, powerful BI capabilities. This is going to be the primary part of my demo. And lastly, Excel as an integrated BI platform. And Monpratap will be talking a lot about this. All right, so let's jump into the demo. So for purposes of this demo, Monpratap and I, we're going to take off our program manager hats at Microsoft, and instead, we're going to become sales managers at Contoso. Now, Contoso is an electronics manufacturing company. It's a global electronics manufacturing company, and it knows the power of business intelligence and has invested heavily in it. Right? So I don't like to brag too much, but Monpratap and I, we're pretty much rock stars as sales managers here. We're known as being efficient, getting our work done, being able to keep the pulse on sales and trends. And today, we're going to give you a sneak peek in how we do it all. All right. Sorry about this. I think the workbook timed out while I was speaking. Let me just try this to see if it's working. Yeah, it seems to be working. All right, so every single morning, I start out looking at this dashboard. And what I really love about this dashboard is it's targeted at me. So over here, I have my directs. This is my sales team, my rockstar sales team that reports to me. And these are the regions that I'm responsible for. Right? So here are the 2011 sales number, as long with how we're trending. Now, what I love about this is it's really beautiful. Right? You notice that, hey, we have these graphics over here, we have these micro charts over here, and we have these full charts down here. But besides being beautiful, this is interactive. Right? Look how I can drive these 2 tables. I click on audio, and bam, look, I see filtered sales by audio across all my sales team as well as my regions. Right? I look at TV and video, same thing, everything updates. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, this looks pretty expensive, right? Here we have this custom control that's driving these 2 tables. There's some custom logic that when all of them are selected, nothing's showing, and when one of them selected, it shows. And these spark lines, these little micro charts over here, that looks like that's something custom built. But in reality, this is nothing more than just Excel. 0 developers, 0 lines of code. This is just a plain Jane Excel workbook in the background that we've simply published to SharePoint through Excel services. Right? So you don't believe me? Let me show you. Right. Here is that exact same workbook. Right? So those graphics over there, they were simply just pictures that we pasted into Excel. Right? Those things that drove the tables, those are just a new feature in Excel 2010 that we call slicers. Spark lines, another new feature. That ability to hide these columns, just a smart use of conditional formatting. So out of the box, we have all of this rich functionality. Not a single line of code was written. We got it up on the web. I think that's pretty amazing. Okay. So as a sales manager, I have several responsibilities. one of my responsibilities is to manage promotions. And here at Contoso, we're in an interesting pickle. Right now, we have an overstock of CRT monitors and inkjet printers. So, that's an interesting problem to have as LCDs are taking over and color laser printers are also becoming more and more popular and cheaper. So I'm trying to create a sales bundle that liquidates some of our stock. So over here, I have a list of all the products that Contoso sells. And this is a lot of products. We have over 2,500 products here. Searching through all of this and sifting through each one to try to find that CRT monitor and that inkjet to bundle together, that's going to be time consuming. But in Excel 2010, we introduced this new feature of search. Right? So using Excel 2010, I can simply search for, let's see, a CRT monitor, right? And then let's see, I want a 15-inch CRT monitor. Let me expand this. Can simply use wildcards to write in my search. And I'm actually looking for a ProSwear CRT 15 monitor. Right? You notice how this is all updating in real time. What's cool about this is that filter isn't actually searching through the worksheet. It's actually searching through the cube. So I could have millions and millions of products in the cube in the back end, and this search would be searching through all of them. So just like that, I've narrowed down my results to 2 monitors. Let's see, I think I'm feeling the white one today, so we'll choose the white one. And I'm not done yet. I still need to find that inkjet printer, right? So using the exact same search, I can search for inkjet printer. I know I chose a white monitor. Let's bundle it together. We're color coordinated here at Excel, so we'll choose a white inkjet monitor, or sorry, a white inkjet printer, and we'll choose the first one. Okay, add that current selection to the filter, and look at that. I have my 15-inch CRT monitor and my archaic inkjet printer all bundled together, right? So that was pretty neat. Now with all promotions, I want to be tracking this. I'm going to be using this very often. I want to track how it's doing according to the sales, according to the inventory over my promotion period. This is what I'm judged on. So even though search is a really powerful tool and it was really easy to get down to these two, I don't want to have to be performing this every single time I look at these products. So how many of you today are familiar with name sets in OLAP? All right, so a few people. So for those of you that don't know, name sets basically allow a group of members to travel together. Right? So we can use that group in many different reports, so without recreating that same set over again. I'm going to show you really quickly how to create a name set in Excel. Right? All you do is you go to your pivot table options. You go to field items and sets and create set based on rows. So you can see these are the 2 products that are in my pivot table. That looks right. All I do is name this set liquidation bundle and click OK. Right. So there you have it. We just easily created a name set that I can reuse in all my other reports in this workbook. Let me show you where that's actually stored. So if you go to your product field list, you go to sets, you can see that's our name set liquidation bundle. It's right now in our row labels. If I created a new pivot table with the same connection, I could use this name set again. Right? So that's going to save us a bunch of time. Right? Search and name sets. OK, but I'm a sales manager. I'm responsible for more than just one promotion, and I'm responsible for many different regions. What I really want is a way to be able to filter to the exact products I want for each region. So for each region, I'm not going to have the same promotions running. So here I have a pivot table, and I have this slicer on the right-hand side. For Asia, I want to show a certain set of products. For Europe, I want to show a certain set of products. And for North America, I want to show an even different set of products. How do I do this? So we've introduced the concept of dynamic name sets into Excel. And what dynamic name sets allows you to do is, based off of the context here being the region, we will show you a specific name set, a specific set of products. So let me show you the MDX. This is not it. Right. So MDX is the query language of AS Cubes. This isn't actually that complicated. All it's saying is, if the promotion is in Asia, use this set of products. If it's in North America, use this set of products. If it's in Europe, use this set of products. So all I have to do is take this logic, right, copy it, create a name set, a new MDX set, paste that MDX logic in, call this regional promotions, and I click this recalculate set with every update. This makes it dynamic. Click OK. So now I see regional promotions in here. I find it in my field list. Sets, regional promotions, drag it into row labels, and look at this. When I click on Europe, I get one set of products. When I click on North America, I get a separate set of products, right? So you can see how easy it is to insert custom MDX. This actually makes the name set feature extremely flexible and powerful. So, great. We've done a ton of work around promotions, and I have this feeling that it's actually going to increase our sales. So I have to go and revise our 2011 sales forecast, right? This is another task that I do often. And what I really want to do, actually, is just go in here and type in the new value. Right? I try to do that, and I get this error, cannot change this part of a pivot table. Right? So traditionally, you simply can't change the value of a pivot table just by typing it in. But in Excel 2010, we introduced this concept of what-if analysis. So here, I enable what-if analysis. And this allows me to type directly into the pivot table. So, cell phones, we read the Gartner reports, we read Forrester, we think smartphones are going to take off. This number looks a little bit too low. We're going to put 600,000 in there. And it takes, right? So even more impressive, we can actually use Excel formulas in here. So I can multiply this, my 2010 actuals, by some factor, and it updates. Right? So let me show you something else that's interesting. Using calculate pivot table with changes, keep this number in your sights. When we say calculate pivot table with changes, let me see real quick. Right? You can see that the grand totals update immediately. Right? OK, great. So now that we've changed this value in the pivot table, there's a couple things we can do. We can just leave it as it is, and it'll stay here in the workbook. Or we can choose to actually commit it to the underlying cube. Right? And that's really powerful. So over here in what-if analysis, I can say publish changes. And what this does is it pushes it to the cube. Right? Of course, it still needs to be approved. So all you IT managers, don't worry, we didn't tunnel through your security and just automatically update your cube for you. So the great thing about this feature is within Excel, I can access my data. I can do my analysis. Here I did it in the pivot table. I could have munged numbers and do all the things that you love with Excel over on the right-hand side. After your analysis, I can right away just update those numbers right back into the cube. I don't have to switch applications. All of this is done right within Excel. Great. Now, as my title implies, I'm a regional sales manager. I have directs, and I'm responsible for them. So I want to keep up to date with how the directs are doing, but not only with how they're doing, how the other employees are doing as well. So this is for a couple reasons. I like to look at the talent, who are the top performers in case a spot opens up on my team. And just generally, I like to keep my pulse on how the sales team is doing in general. So what's interesting about this worksheet over here is on the left-hand side, I have these lists of slicers. And I've shown you slicers before. When you click on them, they filter the pivot table. Right? So these visual filters aren't just glorified filters. They do more. Yes, they filter the underlying pivot table, but they also provide more value. Let me show you how. For example, let me click on Yasi right here. Yes, it's going to filter this underlying pivot table. It's going to show me Yasi's employees. But besides that, it also shows me who his manager is, as well as what sales channel he plays in. Right? So he doesn't sell using catalogs or online. He's primarily just a brick and mortar store guy. If we were just using filters, we would have never gotten this information. So with the power of slicers, especially when you combine it with other slicers, you can do this cross-filtering, and then you can see your analysis becomes much richer. So let me show you how easy it is to just insert one of these. Click on my pivot table, and all I have to do is insert slicer. And I already have the sales channel, managers, and leads. What I really want are the sales territories. So easy as that. I choose my dimension. I move my slicer around. I'm just going to pretty it up real quick. Choose this custom formatting. Increase number of columns. Right. And there you go. Now I learned something else new about Yasi. His sales territories, or the manager, Dan Bacon, he only operates in the sales territories Taiwan, Russia, and the United States. If I were to look at Kim, many more, right? So with the power of slicers, you get a much richer analysis. Now, let me show you a little bit of a deeper analysis. So far, I've shown you slicers, I've shown you searching, but what about the meats and guts of Excel, right? Formulas. So here I have a table that shows, that has a sort of complicated formula in here. Let me show it to you really quickly. Right? This stuff actually makes me smile. I think, it's like, yeah, engineers, we crafted this amazing formula. But in reality, this isn't that complicated. All it's doing is a series of lookups. So it looks at the name, Aaron. It looks it up in that table, that lookup table below. It finds that Aaron's responsible for Europe and games and toys. It then goes to that table on the right-hand side, looks for Europe, games, and toys, and takes the grand total amount and plugs it into that table. Right? So it's not actually that complicated. What's actually interesting is this table on the right-hand side. So it looks like a table, but in reality, it's a pivot table. Right? It's just formatted to look like a table. And why this is important is, let me show you how you're more familiar with pivot table looks. Right? So this might be more familiar to you with the hierarchies. But you notice that when I turn it into a regular pivot table layout, you lose all of the lookup functionality in your formulas. So we just added this one small feature of repeating all item labels, and it allows all the power of those VLOOKUPs with all those SUMIFs. Right? Something else that we pride ourselves in Excel is creating robust features. So I showed you slicers, and they're very great in terms of analysis, but we've also been sure to integrate them with the rest of Excel in terms of formulas. So let me show you something interesting. So right now, I have Aaron selected. If I select Adam, keep your eye in this cell over here. Right? If I select Adam, right, it actually updates to Adam. So what's happening here is this is just a cube ranked member formula. All it does is it returns the ranked member, the nth member, in a set. Right? So what we're doing is that set is defined by the slicer over there, and we're just returning the first member of it. So before it was Aaron, and now we're returning Adam. And that plays into all the formulas that we have elsewhere. Okay. Pretty neat. And let me finish off with that beautiful report that I showed you in the beginning. Right? So the one thing that's missing, I've already shown you slicers. I've already shown you how slicers can play into formulas. The one thing that's missing from the report that I showed you in the beginning and this report here is those pretty spark lines. Right? Let me show you how easy it is to create those spark lines. All you have to do is select the range. You go to the Insert tab, and here's where you usually associate charts. You'll notice this new chunk over here called spark lines. Insert a line, spark line, and here I have all of my sales data. This data is just a pivot table that I've converted over to formulas. And I'm going to select my range and click OK. Right? Easy as that, I've inserted my spark lines. And because this was a pivot table that was converted into formulas, these are all cube formulas, it ties in with these slicers. So everything will update accordingly. Right? So there you have it. I showed you really quickly some of the more powerful BI features in Excel. I showed you search, name sets, how that reduces inefficiencies. I've shown you dynamic name sets, write back, and spark lines. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Montpratap, who's going to talk about Excel services.
Cool. All right. So thank you, Kevin. Again, I'm Montpratap Suri, Program Manager with Excel Services. And Kevin just showed off all the functionality in Excel, and I'm going to take it off with Excel Services. Skipping too soon. OK. So with Excel Services 2010, we made a ton of investments in BI. Now, I'm going to take some of the functionality that Kevin showed off, put it on the web, and then try and extend that even further. Now, for those of you who are familiar with Excel Services 2007, I saw a few hands go up. And for those who are not familiar, I hope this session is really valuable learning about it. But with Excel Services 2007, we actually gave you connecting to external data sources, data analysis and reporting, discovery and insights, to name a few features. With Excel Services 2010, we've continued to build on that promise. So let's dive into some demos. OK, so as Kevin talked about, this is the dashboard we spend most of our time in. This is what I call our 9 a.m. morning scenario. We come in the morning. This is the first dashboard we see. We live and breathe this dashboard. We want to see how our products are doing, what are the sales that we made, what percentage was the market at, are we growing, are we not growing. That is something we do day in and day out. One of the things that Kevin didn't talk about that I want to point your attention to is look at the fidelity that we have between client and server. This is the exact same report that was built in the client, and we work really hard on making sure the fidelity is the same on client and server. So features that get added on the client work exactly the same on the server. So you notice how when I would select slicers or select multiple slicers, darn you, session timeout. So as you select multiple slicers, you can see how the table actually goes ahead and updates, and the interaction with the table or the report is exactly the same as it would be in the client. But not too long ago, in fact, about 3 years ago, our reports didn't look like this. In fact, the building blocks for our reports look very much like this. Now, Kevin showed you something like this. This was a sales forecast that we used back in the day. This is something that would tell us what our actual versus budgets was. Now, to break it down, this is nothing but a pivot table in a web pod published via Excel Services. So the data actually lives in a cube. I connect to a cube in Excel, bring that data into Excel. I create a pivot table of it, and then I publish it here. Now, given that this is a pivot table, I get the all familiar interactivity, which shows me all the various stores or the markets that I have. I can go ahead and select North America and Europe for my analysis. And oops. And when I click on OK, it actually goes ahead and updates, and I can analyze. But it's showing me that multiple items got selected. Now, just by taking one functionality that Kevin talked about, we're going to see how the building block actually changes in Excel Services 2010. So here's the 2010 dashboard, and I know Kevin showed this off to you as well. Now, this dashboard, just by adding one functionality, slicers, which are visual filters, actually make the scenario much more powerful. If I was to actually open this in Excel, you would notice that these are nothing but two worksheets in the same workbook. So which means we're connecting to the exact same data source, and I have all my product categories available for my analysis. But what's really interesting, and Kevin already talked about this a little bit, is that by having slicers, my analysis becomes much more richer. Not only do I have all the product categories and my data available here for my analysis, I also have the members driving that data in the form of slicers aiding my analysis. So if I go ahead and select North America and Europe, I get to know something more about the different product entities. I get to know about the various currencies that I'm using for my trade. I get to know about what account levels I have and what other markets encompass in there. So just by adding one functionality, the analysis became much more richer. Okay, so that's just one feature, one functionality. That I have lots more to show you. I'm just getting started. So let's go ahead and take a look at my sales projections. Now, the reason I'm so interested about sales projections is because it's one thing to be able to do goals versus actuals or my forecast versus actuals. But to be able to do that, I need to have a much crisper understanding of what my sales reps are actually selling in the field. I need to know what sales they are making. I need to know what sales they've made year over year. Now, why is that important? It tells me that maybe there are certain sales reps that actually need some help. There are some sales reps that are not going to meet their targets this year or this quarter, and I need to go do something about it, because ultimately I don't get paid if I don't meet my targets. So this dashboard actually lets me do exactly that. On the left here, I have all my sales reps who are selling out in the field today, their projected sales, their actual sales, and the goals that they committed to. And here's a nifty little KPI that helps me get just by a single view, I can just tell who's meeting their targets and who's struggling. At the bottom of it, I have the same data in a visual representation, and below that is a chart that actually tells me the shares of my sales reps towards my total sales. So that's one web part. On the right here is all my sales, year-over-year sales for all my various product categories, and below this is a web part that actually has a graphical representation of the exact same thing. Now, to set the stage for this, these are actually three different web parts. This is web part number 1, this here is web part 2, and this is web part 3. These three web parts are actually connected to three separate workbooks, which means they're pulling data from three separate data sources. Now, if I wanted to go ahead and make a change to my projected sales here, how would I do that in 2007? I'm not going to go into the details, but it would suffice to say that there would have to be a lot of things in place for me to be able to make a change here. Now, I just had a conversation with Amy last night, and Amy was telling me that she's really close on closing a deal that will actually show her numbers go up by at least 2 points. So I know that Amy's going to do well here. So I want to go ahead and make changes to Amy's numbers. In Excel Services 2010, I can go ahead and just type within the grid. Nothing is easier than that. So I just went ahead. I was able to go ahead and make a change directly in the grid. All of this is possible because we added an attribute to our web part property that says allow typing and formulas within the grid. Now, while I was doing that, did anyone notice what updated in the dashboard? Let me do it once more. So let's go ahead, and I know Steve's kicking butt. He's going to continue to do so. Did anyone notice what updated? You would notice that only the relevant portion of the dashboard and the worksheet here got updated in the web part. In 2007, if I was to go ahead and do this via parameter or a filter, the entire page will refresh. So just by doing this, based on our Ajax-based implementation in Excel Services 2010, I'm able to make changes to the changes in place and have only the relevant pieces update and the rest of the dashboard available to me for my analysis. So at this point, since I already talked about this, I'm also going to show off some functionality. So I want to type in a formula, and I get the all familiar IntelliSense around formulas. So I'd go ahead and I'll select all the sales. And like that, I have a calculated field in there that's calculating all the formulas I have. Now, all of this is great, but what would really get me excited is somehow this dashboard could read my mind. If somehow this dashboard could know that I'm actually looking at John's sales figures, and I want to look at the year-over-year sales for John. I'm looking at Amy's sales figures, and likewise, I want to see year-over-year sales for Amy. Now, in Excel Services 2007, those who've used it, how would you do that? Well, let me say, it's a trick question. There's no way to do that because these are 3 different web ports talking to 3 separate data sources or 3 different workbooks. Now, if this was the same workbook, maybe it would have been possible by using a report filter. But in Excel Services 2010, maybe I can do this. So I chose John, and something happened there. Let me see. Ooh, maybe it is actually reading my mind. No? Okay. It's not. It's actually using the JavaScript object model. It's the latest addition to our extensibility model in Excel Services 2010. Now, what that enables me to do is it enables me to listen to events that happen inside the grid, to actions that a user would perform inside the grid. For example, a cell selection, a range selection, a value getting updated. It enables me to react to those changes. For example, now that a cell got selected, what is the value in that cell? I want to extract that value. And then I can go take some action on that, which is go and update these web parts here and drive changes there. Now, some of you in the audience are going, wait a minute, he said JavaScript, which means I need to hire developers. There's going to be a lot of code. Throw in a license of Visual Studio. This is expensive. Well, let me tell you, this was as easy as writing 20 lines of code in my trusted notepad. So let me show it to you. So let's go ahead and start editing this page. And as you can see, here are the 3 web parts that I talked about. But what's really hidden here and not shown is a content editor web part. I love content editor web parts. They have some really sweet functionality in there. One of the things that a content editor web part lets me do is actually give a link to a text file. So if I click on this, it shows you that I'm linking a text file called sales-dashboard.jsom.txt. So this is the text file that has my JavaScript code. Now the fact that I'm actually writing in a text file and uploading it to SharePoint gives me some benefits. I get a little bit of source control. And also when I make changes to the JavaScript file, it gets applied right away, instantly. I don't have to worry about publishing it and going through a publish scenario. So let's go ahead and take a look at that JavaScript code. So here's the JavaScript code. And I said I wrote this in Notepad. Right up on top is just some HTML. I'm declaring a doc type and my title, head, and the body. And here are a bunch of variables that are declared here that actually let me get started. Up here on the top, I'm actually looking at an attach event to make sure that when the page load happens, I'm notified that the page actually loaded. This is actually a repeat of the page load because as we were running this in this network, I was noticing that page load was not working as I wanted. This is not JavaScript. We're not into JavaScript code at this point. This is purely just the browser code. And then once the page loads, I want to make sure that the JavaScript object model is ready and that it gets applied and it's attached and ready for me to use. So that's what this is doing. I'm just making sure that the JavaScript object model is ready to use. Once the JavaScript object model loads, I want to make sure that all my web parts have loaded. So here are 3 variables tracking that all the instances, 1, 2, and 3. Remember, I have 3 web parts to make sure that 3 Excel Web Access EWA web parts actually load. And I validate that here, that they've loaded. And based on that, I actually start listening for cell changes. So that's what I've declared here, active cell change handler. That's actually now listening for changes that happen in the grid. So when I was selecting John, Dan, Amy, that's what this function was what was getting called. Now once that cell change handler event gets called, it actually passes to me a range, the range that I was working with. So it passes to me the actual cell value that I selected. I get the address and read the value in there, and then I do some validation again. The validation that I'm trying to do is the fact that I'm in column 1, because I do not want to be passing junk data. I want to make sure that I'm passing the names of my sales rep. It's also checking to see whether the rows were between row 8 and 17. Again, a validation that I stay within a range and I don't exceed it. And once those conditions are met, I'm actually just asking the other 2 web pods to get named items from their workbooks based on this name here, product sales, and appending the value that I just read. So this now becomes product sales Amy, product sales John, product sales Dan, and the chart becomes product chart Amy, product chart Don, product chart John, and that's how those 2 web pods are updated. That's pretty much it. With 3 simple functions, about 20 lines of code that you can write in Notepad and get this scenario working. So as you start thinking about some of the functionality here, you can see that just by using the JavaScript object model, your solution is now beginning to actually grow out of Excel. You're no longer contained in the walls of Excel. You can actually create a solution that works, that looks like a dashboard or looks like a web page, still using the guts of Excel, but now it's actually grown out of it. So before I move on, I wanted to point your attention to a couple of things here. So the first, did anyone notice the URL here? Let's do a quick comparison. Here was my 2010 dashboard, and I was on intranet.contoso.com. That's my intranet. When I go to sales projections, the URL actually now says sharepoint.com. Yes, this is Office 365 beta live. This is Excel services running. We went beta like a few weeks ago, and I have live working code there. The JavaScript object model works there. Excel services works there. This is really amazing. So for those of you who are actually on the Excel services beta, the Office 365 beta, thank you. And for those of you who want to get on it, stop by our booth and talk to us. I have a link at the end. But do sign up. We want your feedback. We want to learn more from what your experiences are there. So okay, so at this point, I've built dashboards. I've done my analysis. I know what my sales are selling. So I can go back to my analysis and start working with Kevin to make sure we're on the same page. The numbers are due end of this week. I want to make sure the analysis we're doing is synchronized. We don't end up projecting different figures to our respective bosses and throw the entire machinery out of whack. So I want to go back to doing some sales analysis here. And as I'm doing the sales analysis, a thought crosses my mind. So the previous dashboard was able to read my mind using JavaScript object model. I wonder if Kevin can read my mind too. Maybe. We'll try. So when I do this analysis, I often look at some of these numbers here, and I fire Kevin an email. And I tell Kevin, hey, Kevin, I was looking at the sales figures for audio and video, and as I was looking through the numbers, I saw Paul's numbers. Paul's numbers didn't look that great. I think he's struggling, even though the numbers here show that he's in the green. Could you take a look? Could you double check what's going on there? And Kevin would go open this dashboard, filter it down, look at Paul's numbers, and get back to me and saying, no, the numbers look right. Something must be wrong in your analysis. Now we go back and forth. Now this is great, because at least we're not doing what we used to do earlier, which was attach workbooks and send to each other. So now with one version of the truth, with a dashboard here, we're just sending each other emails with some analysis in there. Would be really awesome if I didn't have to do that and Kevin could just read my mind. So I actually built here a nifty little application, actually script, that lets me send Kevin an email and to save me some time while I'm actually working on this analysis. So when I click on this, it actually boots up Outlook and sends Kevin an email saying, hey, Kevin, take a look at this. I was doing some analysis and thought this was interesting. So Kevin sees this email. He's like, oh, wow, Mantrab is saving me time by actually sending me a link to the dashboard. Let me go ahead and click on it. And when he clicks on it, what does Kevin see? He sees the exact same thing that I was looking at. He is a mind reader. No. Kevin is a rock star, but not a superhuman. So what is actually going on here? So enter REST API, another addition to our extensibility model. So we already talked about JavaScript API. What REST API lets you do is, in a non-programmatical way, wait, let me repeat that, non-programmatical way, get data out of your workbook, which means if you can craft a URL that actually looks like this, you'll be able to get data out of Excel. Interesting. So let's take a look at what this code looks like. Since I said I'm running a script here. So again, right up on top, HTML, nothing fancy there. Here's the href link that I created that says, click to send an email that contains a selected range. Here's some variable declarations. And the interesting variable to notice here is the REST URL. This is the URL that actually points to my intranet, the VTI bin, where I actually have the REST API. And from there on, I just pass it the path through my workbook and some reserved characters or reserved words like model and ranges. And notice how next to the ranges right now is empty. Moving down, this is the standard JavaScript code that I just showed you, very similar. Looking for page load, making sure the page loads correctly. Once the page loads, I want to make sure that my JavaScript object model is ready, which is the exact same code we looked at before. And then again, I'm listening. I'm listening for an event. I'm listening for the fact that selection changed. And when the actual selection change happens here, I'm actually getting the range that I selected. And this is the only fancy work that I'm doing here. I'm actually replacing colons with pipes. So when a range comes back to me as A:2 to B32, I want to replace colon with pipes. Why am I doing that? Because the syntax for the REST API expects pipes and not colons. So this is the only fancy bit of code that I'm doing here. And after that, I just append the URL with the range that I actually parsed, and I replace the colon with pipe, which happens right here. And then I'm crafting the body of the document by saying, take a look, I was doing some analysis and thought this was interesting. So again, a few lines of code, a really powerful scenario. Now, you can think of applying this in so many different ways. Often, Kevin and I do presentations, and like 10 minutes before the presentation, Kevin would come back and say, remember the analysis we did? I think we're off. The numbers have changed. Could you update your slide deck? Now, 10 minutes before a presentation to a VP, we sweat, we scramble, we make changes. But instead, if we were actually using a REST URL in our PowerPoint application, if we put a REST URL in the document, we won't have to do that because it would always fetch the latest data from Excel services on SharePoint. Yes, this would work in 365. Yes, yes. So, okay, so let's tackle that in the Q&A. I'll address that in the Q&A. But the short answer is yes, you can actually put it in shared documents. If you have permissions to edit a page, you can write JavaScript today. There's nothing stopping you from writing JavaScript today. But it's completely up to the administrator. Okay. So, so far we've talked about the building blocks of the dashboard. I showed you how you can add a slicer to a pivot table, make the analysis much more powerful. We talked about how you can use the JavaScript object model to actually talk between web parts that are actually pulling data from different data sources. I showed you a mashup using JavaScript object model and REST API on how you can actually pull data out of a workbook in a non-programmatical way. But keep in mind, these are nothing but building blocks. While these actually, I hope that's not my phone. Probably not. Okay. So you can note how this is, all of these actually let you pull your solution out from the walls of Excel and extend that even further. But you can take this one step further. You can start thinking of Excel ceasing to be the solution, but becoming the component of a much bigger solution. So let me show you an example of how that is. So here's a cost of ownership calculator that we build for our sales reps when they go close on deals that they can show to their customers. Now, if I was to break this calculator down or this page down, I have some charts that are doing some analysis here. I have Excel here that is actually doing the calculator. And then I have some navigation here that actually lets me navigate through my web pages and some other fields that I have in here. But if I was to actually break this down even further and show what I was talking about, how Excel becomes a component of a solution, you will notice that this is nothing but an EWA web port right here with Excel in it. The navigation here is actually navigating through the sheets within the workbook. So if I actually chose machine inputs, it gave me the machine input sheet in the workbook. The chart here is actually pulling data from the same workbook via REST API. And the navigation here is actually, and the selection elements here which show up as drop-downs are nothing but JavaScript object model that is actually helping me create drop-downs and have them update and drive the dashboard there. So if I choose N36 diesel, you notice how it updated here for N36 diesel and my chart updated. So let me give you a sneak peek at the code. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into all the details here, but let me show you what this code looks like and how are these components organized. And so let's boot up Visual Studio. Open. Let's just do this. Okay. Okay. So now I have my solution here that we can walk through. Okay. So here's the first part. The first part is actually creating the HTML for the solution. This actually is where I have the div where I want to show my chart. So this is the part where I show the divs. This div actually shows where I want to put my hyperlinks. And this div actually has all the drop-downs that I actually created. So this is nothing but part one was just creating the HTML. Part two, we've already talked about, lets you initialize the Excel web access web port and actually load the JavaScript object model and start listening. This is exact same thing. This is listening to the fact that the page loaded, the EWA is ready, get instance of that, and actually start listening for a selection change event. So exactly the same thing that I talked about. This code here actually talks about how do we go ahead and create the hyperlinks. So if you notice here, I'm doing nothing but walking through all the sheets. I get the count of the sheets, and then I'm walking through all the sheet count and just pulling out the sheet name. Once I get the sheet name, I'm just creating a hyperlink with that sheet name in there. So that's what gives me the navigation and lets me walk through what looks like navigation is nothing but walking through the various sheets using JavaScript object model. This is the part that actually addresses what happens when I click on those links and how that hooks up. So I'm not going to walk through all of this code, but this gives you an idea of how you can go ahead and build these solutions where Excel is a component and not just the solution. Okay, so go back. Okay, so we've talked about our enterprise play here. We've talked about how you can create these solutions. We've talked about JavaScript object model. We've talked about REST API, how all of these things will benefit you in the enterprise space. But for a few minutes, I'm going to take off my, did this freeze? But for a few minutes, I'm going to take off my enterprise hat. I'm going to no longer be a sales manager for Contoso. I'm going to talk to you about our consumer play. So as you are aware, we have a free offering out there of Excel web app on SkyDrive and Hotmail. Now with that, in our consumer play, we're going after the masses. We're going after what we call BI for the masses. We want to give them the ability to actually use Excel web app, and create solutions for them that help them do analysis, that help them do much powerful scenarios using Excel. How many times you've come across a table in the web where you felt, I wish I could sort and filter this table? How many times you've come across a table on the web where you felt, I wish these columns were calculated columns? So with Excel Services 2010, we've added embedding. We've added embedding in Excel web app in SkyDrive that enables consumers to actually go and create powerful scenarios for them, just like we can create an enterprise. Actually, I meant powerful scenarios, not the functionality, just to be clear. So let's go ahead and take a look at what some folks are actually doing with these solutions. So here is brew in a bag calculator that was done by Beer Review Dude. You notice he is Excel embedded here. You can go ahead and specify how much grain, how much boil time, and it tells you total strike water volume for that. These are all calculated values in Excel. Here's another one. This is Amicus Commerce, and this is their product catalog, again, Excel. I've kept these in purpose I've shown you the ones that have the header and the rows so that you can see that this is Excel. But you can start to see that as you turn that off, this starts to look more and more like an application. Here's the match play for the PGA tournament that happens that shows you who's going to play who and who's the winner. Again, Excel. Here's professional Christian. They want to see who's attending church. Here's the attendance and group membership. So they want to do some expense analysis. They want to see the Sunday morning participation. So people are getting really creative with the use of Excel web app here. Here's the latest metrics. And here's more at a glance some of the other metrics. So you can really start to see that people really want to take the data that they have and start to do analysis and not actually have to pay a developer build web pages. Here's another example of a risk calculator. This is a beta version that got put out there, and to name a few. MSN Lifestyle actually adopted this as well, and this is the Belgium side. This actually shows you a BMI calculator, and I can't read Belgian. But they also have a nifty calorie teller that, again, uses Excel web app embedded that you can update these values. But what really got me stoked was the guy in Philippines. This is nothing but a group where they breed a certain breed of roosters, Ilongo, and they meet to have rooster fights, and they place bets on them, and they keep history of who's winning, how many fights have been won, and so people are really creative with the solution. It tells you that the scorpion's actually losing, and Roberto is actually doing awesome. So that just gives you an idea of what these solutions are like. So let me show you really quick of how you can go ahead and build something like this. And to drive this point home, this is not there today in the enterprise space, but something that we're thinking about. We want to bring this to the enterprise space. So what would be an enterprise play here? So at Contoso, every quarter, and then every quarter, we go ahead and do an earnings call. We put an earnings report out there. And today, the earnings report is nothing but a link to an Excel file that users download and then view it in Excel. But now you can imagine that instead of putting a link to a file, I can actually put the earnings report out there itself. So here's an example that I created of an earnings report of our Contoso sales that actually shows you the earnings report embedded right inside our website. I can work across and go look at my earnings report in here. Let's take a look how this was created. So notice this is nothing but an embedded HTML tag. And if I can show you the HTML view, no. Oh, right there. Yeah, sorry, I was blind for a second. Hang on, I'll just do it from scratch. So to be able to do this, the file actually has to be a public document on SkyDrive, and I want to go ahead and sign into Office Live. And as you can see, I have my financial statement here that I've uploaded in my public documents. That is exactly what you were looking at for Contoso sales. So that's great. And it is as I said, it has to be a public file, so it has to be publicly shared to be able to use this. But the entry point here is for embed. I just go to share and embed. And this actually gives me an iframe code that I can go ahead, let that window go. That I can go ahead and post here. And notice some of the parameters that I have in here. I have a parameter that says allow interactivity. So I can set this to true or false. This is what will dictate whether I can actually select fields in there. I can also have a field in there that says allow typing equals true. that would enable something what we call scratchpad mode, which means you can make changes, but you will not be able to commit those changes. You can also, there are other values that you can specify, for example, which active cell do you want the sheet to load at, and so on and so forth. So here are some of the things that we have added in the consumer space that, that we look forward to add in the enterprise space through div syndication and bring embedding there as well. Okay. So to summarize, what did you just see? I showed you the next generation of Excel services dashboards. I showed you dashboards, how dashboards were there in 2007, and how using some of the functionality, you can create more interactive dashboards in Excel services 2010, not only in SharePoint, but also in Office 365. I showed you customization for increased interactivity and insights. We talked about how you can create much more interactive dashboards by adding slicers, by using JavaScript object model, having that drive and update multiple web parts. And then projecting BI beyond the spreadsheet and the page was really about extending the solution where you go beyond the walls of Excel and you extend it to the web, and then Excel ceasing to be the solution and becoming a component of a much bigger solution. Again, Kevin talked about this. After all that I talked about, if you walk away, I would like you to walk away with these three things. Excel everywhere. Excel on the phone, Excel on the web, Excel on the PC, even the cloud, we're all in. Powerful BI capabilities. We talked about, Kevin talked a lot about some of the BI functionality we've added in Excel. I showed you how the fidelity of those functionalities in Excel services. So really, really some good work there. And then integrated BI platform. Much of my demos were catered towards that, how you can make Excel and Excel services a BI platform. Here are some of the resources that would be really helpful for you. The Excel and the Excel services blog. This is the product team's blog where we talk about the product. We keep it regularly updated with features. At times, we show off solutions there on how you can use Excel and Excel services to really build some nifty things. Something to really watch for. The Office 365 beta sign up. If you have not signed up for the beta, do it. It is really easy. In a few minutes, literally a few minutes, you can have a SharePoint site up and running up in the cloud. Or if you're not interested in having SharePoint and you just want the web apps, you can go for a light tenant and have that set up. But it's really easy. It's like 1, 2, 3, as easy as that. And then the Office 365 beta blog, for if you're really going that route, you really want to participate in that community to know some of the what the early adopters are doing, what are they learning, some of the pain points that they're experiencing. And this gives us an opportunity to hear about some of your feedback and what are you seeing there. Now, with Excel and Excel services, we added a ton of functionality, and R is really not enough to cover all of it. So I'm going to leave this slide up here that talks about all the functionality that we've added for you to look at. And at this point, I'd also like to open for questions, if you have any. Go ahead. So the question was, I'll rephrase a little bit. The question was that in Excel Services 2007, there were certain features that were not supported, or what we call as unsupported features. What is their status with Excel Services 2010? So in Excel Services 2010, we've done a lot of work to first, right off the box, support as many features as we can. We have narrowed it down to literally 1 or 2 features or functionality that we don't, or a handful of functionality that we don't support. But for the most part, you'll be able to open your workbooks in the browser. So we bucketed them into 3 categories. Features that we don't have a very good understanding of and we can't open. We're not too happy about that, but we want to work on that. But then there are features that we do know about and we want you to at least be able to view your file. So we let you open that file, we don't let you edit it. We call this edit blocking. And then there are the third set of features, which is we let you open the file and we let you edit the file, but when you go to edit the file, we scrub the features for you. And we notify you of the fact that we're going to scrub features for you. So comments are still unsupported, unfortunately. But you can, but it's not a load blocking feature. The workbook will load, you won't be able to edit it.
In 2010, do you support pivot table? Previous version, you support pivot table. This version, how about pivot table?
In Excel Services 2010, we do not have support for query tables, unfortunately. Something we've heard strong feedback about, and something we are working on and thinking about.
Can you talk about data connection library, data connection behind the Excel service, which is very weak portion previously?
So the data connection portion for Excel services, you still, as I said, you start in Excel, you do your data connection work in Excel, and then you publish to SharePoint via Excel services. Once you publish, the connection is actually there embedded in Excel, or you can use a data connection library in SharePoint to actually leverage and then connect using either Windows Auth or Secure Store or what have you. And from there on, it's just how Excel works. It's just working in the browser. More question? Do you have
Over
in
there.
the back?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Did you mention Power Pivot?
Yeah, in your example, you used an OLAP view
Yeah.
and you used MDX.
hmm
It used like view access, store procedures, SQL access, it would have to be OLAP.
Actually, I think, Alan, do you know the answer to that one?
So, in what context? You mean to connect to a...
We use store procedures as an interface for our database.
Right.
So for a front-end tool, we need to be able to pull in a result set from store procedures and have that as the data source.
But are you asking whether you can use it with Power Pivot or with Excel without Power Pivot? Or both?
Whatever he was doing.
This was not Power Pivot. This was connected to
This
the
was-
Excel analysis service server, to UEM.
I guess that's what I'm saying. I don't want to use all, we don't want to burn Q.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want to burn Q, so can I still have the same functionality if I want to do direct SQL.
So, some of it, not all of it. I mean, it's the long
Presumably that if statement,
right?
and that if statement that he wrote, could that have been done in SQL instead of MDX?
Well, we were using.
That was, so that was a name set, and that's cube only. That single feature, the name. So there's some. So the set feature is cube only. Slices are not. Are both. You know. So some features are cube only or OLAP only, and some are not. So it depends on the feature. But that particular one is unfortunately OLAP only.
Is there a book that covers what this session covers? Because this was fantastic, but a lot of and I don't want to
Whatever the specific book covers just this.
You know, that's a great idea. Maybe Kevin and I can write a book and make some money off it.
Hey, that'd be a great idea.
More questions? Yes.
Okay, is there any kind of tipping point where you say, okay, you need Excel the way you do it, so you need to the Power Pivot or performance point?
So I can answer that two ways. I mean, from the client and the server perspective, it really boils down to what your needs are. We actually support. We have in the BI space. We have different products. We have PPS. We have Performance Point. We have Excel services, and then you have Power Pivot and Excel and the capability there. If you, depending on what scale you want to work at, do you want to give? If you want to give BI for the masses, if you want to give end users the flexibility of creating their own reports, Excel and Excel services plays very well there. If you want top-down reports that are created and you want your employees actually to follow a structure that's prepared, Power Pivot is the way to go. So it really depends if you want a top-down, you want a bottom-up, which approach you want to go. So that's one way to think about it.
So another way in terms of functionality, right? Power Pivot, the strength of Power Pivot are the relations that you can build ad hoc. Right, you can pull in multiple data sources and build those relationships, right? And that's not native functionality in Excel. The other point is just the size of the data set, right? Power Pivot can support, Excel is great, we can support 1 million rows, but Power Pivot just blows that out of the water, right? So simply the scale.
I mean, and the best way to think about it is that these are all solutions out there that you can combine together to create a really strong BI platform. So that's how I think about it.
In the example, you showed that there's a switch back and forth between Excel web app and the Excel services.
Uh-huh.
So can you clarify what functions available in the web app and what functions available?
Sure. So to clarify between Excel Web App and Excel Services ships as part of SharePoint Server 2010. So you get all the enterprise features as part of it. You get the programmability features that I talked about, which are REST API and JavaScript. You also get the Web Services API and the Excel Web Access web port. So all the dashboarding, all that functionality is part of the enterprise SKU. Excel Web App has the editing and the collaboration features that we've added in Excel Services 2010, Excel Web App 2010. So in 2007, you could only view workbooks. In 2010, you can not only can you view them, you can edit them, and you can also collaborate with your peers on it. So if you get Excel Service and Excel Web App, cohesively you get a much bigger set of functionality. Yes, Excel Web App ships as its own SKU as part of the Web Companion SKU. So you could get that if you get SharePoint Foundation and have it installed on top of that. So you could use it that way. And it's also, and then we have a public offering on SkyDrive.
Yeah, I was thinking more like if I had a library of Excel spreadsheets that I just wanted to make available in a page without using a SharePoint. I like the web app, the Excel web app.
Right. So unfortunately, one of the requirements for the web apps is to have SharePoint Foundation installed at a minimum. So you definitely need SharePoint Foundation, and on top of that, Excel Web App could work, or actually would work beautifully. And then you have obviously the free offering in SkyDrive.
Is SharePoint Foundation the slimmed down version of? I'm not familiar with the SharePoint Foundation.
These are the different SKUs of SharePoint. So SharePoint Foundation is the base SKU, and then you have SharePoint Standard, and then SharePoint Enterprise.
Oh, okay. Okay. It's like SharePoint Services. Is embedding to embed? You can only do that with SkyDrive.
I'm sorry. Where's right. Sorry, I lost you in the light.
When you do Excel embedding,
Uh-huh.
can you only do SkyDrive, or can you do it through like a SharePoint library?
So right now, it's only there in our consumer place. So it's only there in SkyDrive today. But we are thinking about bringing it pretty soon to the enterprise space, because we know there's a lot of value that comes out of it. But in the enterprise space, you have web parts, and web parts let you do most of what embedding would let you do. But this is something we're thinking about, and expect it sometime soon. In the back.
Do you have any plans on producing a walkthrough of this demo and putting it online so that some of us can recreate some of this stuff that you've done?
Yes, we could do that. We could create a hands-on lab that actually walks you through it.
Yeah.
That I see how that would have tremendous value out of it. I was there at the TechEd booth yesterday, and there was a lot of good hands-on lab on PPS and Excel services, and they are really valuable. So we could think about doing that.
Yeah.
It's just that we don't have it right now, but that's good feedback, something to think about.
Yeah. Also, I encourage you to check out the Excel and Excel Services blogs. A lot of the features that we showed, little parts and pieces, they're all described in the Excel Services blog, or the Excel and Excel Services blog. We can probably create something that links them all together better, but there's a wealth of information on the blog.
I guess it would be nice to know what all the pieces we needed to have infrastructure-wise to support this demo
Yeah.
as well. And I guess having that enumerated somewhere in the document would make it a lot easier to
Sure.
create something.
Right.
Right. Question? So the dashboard that I showed in Office 365 was not connecting to a cube. It was actually connecting to Excel workbooks that were getting updated by sales that are out in the field. So it was not. So it was connected just to Excel. And it was just Excel workbook that lived in shared documents on Office 365. Yeah, all those files were up on Office 365. More questions? Great. Well, thank you for coming.
One more.
And don't forget to do our evaluations. That is something we really value, and we get to know how you're doing, what you want to hear about. So, thank you.